Hi everybody, it's Nerdicane again. I'm still doing the continuation of the comparison, the contrast and comparison of the X-Men. Uh, we are on issue 2, and right off the bat, I just wanted to... This is a tale of two covers. This X-Men Blue number 2 is the X-Men fighting this giant version of Magneto, which I don't know what that's supposed to mean, why he's so big, but once again, a bait and switch. In this book, they don't really fight Magneto. They fight him in a danger room sequence, but they don't really fight him. So, but this is one from the '90s. This was the conclusion of the fight. The fight in issue 1 was sort of left as a cliffhanger, with Magneto showing up, and here you see Magneto triumphant. You see Professor Xavier tied up in all these wires and all these cables, and the X-Men looking like they've been turned to stone and smashed. So this is an eye-catching cover. This just grabs you and says, hey, you need to buy me because Magneto is triumphant in this one. This one says, once again, X-Men are fighting Magneto. Don't know why he's a giant now. It doesn't do a whole lot for me. Getting into the story of this one, it flashes back a couple months, and this is basically Magneto talking Jean into studying under him, or letting him be the leader of the X-Men, her mentor, which is a little strange because, as it points out, we had some debate in this before as to when this time-displaced team was pulled out of their timeline. And in this sequence, she basically says, like, it was a few weeks or months before the events in X-Men number 1, and they were pulled out of their own timeline right after that, not very far after that. So Magneto hadn't done the whole change to a good guy back and forth that he did throughout the 70s and 80s. So once again, that's why the team seems very green. And it just seems odd that suddenly she's like, oh, okay, I'll work for you. And another thing, she shows up in a junkyard without any other X-Men to talk to a fully suited Magneto, which, I mean, would any of you do that in the same situation? No. Then it cuts from the past, talking in the junkyard, to now. They're fighting Magneto, and it's just not working. This is a cool thing. Jean has this ability to augment the powers of the team now, which is kind of neat. I kind of like that. That's a really great power that you would find in a leader of a group, and yeah, it's just kind of cool that they've gone that direction. If any of you guys played the old Star Wars Galaxies and you remember, there was a very unique job class called Squad Leader, and the Squad Leader did a lot of that. It was a job class specifically geared for being in groups and augmenting your teammates' abilities, which was really cool. But I digress. That's Star Wars Galaxy. That's kind of showing how old I am. Their attacks aren't working. Magneto is shrugging it off. This is old Magneto. This is old, veteran, seasoned, very powerful Magneto. And he drops looks like a train car on Scott. And right here to the next page, cut to, they're walking. This is one page. This is a hard, bad edit. This just goes from smash, and then suddenly Scott is up and walking. And it's not even until later in this panel that you see that, okay, it's a danger room program. There's really nothing to set that up to even lead the reader to think that in between. You could have done one panel and cleared that up. But once again, it just seems like a page is missing out of this. We're going to cut over to this book. This is a continuation of the fight on Genosha. Great splash page. And this is another difference that I'm seeing is, in the 90s, there was this, within the first 3 pages, you got a splash page. And this is, once again, Jim Lee's art. The layout, the background, everything is beautiful. Nowadays in Marvel, I think they would be a little lazy with the background and do a high angle so the background is only ground, not a cityscape that they have to color and draw and get the perspectives right on. Once again, fight, fight, fight. Genosha has ceramic helicopters, which Magneto just smashes again. Keeping in line with the 90s, it's just action, action, action. And also, another recurring theme from the first issue, let's see. In the first fight, Rogue got taken out by missiles. And then she got taken out by a nuke over Russia. And now she just gets basically swatted by Magneto and just thrown into the bay. And I don't think it ever really shows her get out of there. I mean, it shows her at the end of the fight, but once again, apparently Rogue, very easy to swat. Another recurring theme is what I'm starting to call the battle kiss. Fabian does a battle kiss on Psylocke, which, once again, he's a mutant who can augment, and sometimes wildly and dangerously, which is what he does. Just sends her off the deep end, and it's a really neat thing in battle because she's going nuts, and then the team has to devote members to go track her down and keep her from getting into even more danger. Cut away to S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, and this is a very, very 90s drawing. This is Nick Fury, the 90s. Guns everywhere, gadgets everywhere, pockets, pockets, pockets. For those of you who didn't collect comics or weren't alive in the 90s, this is a very 90s panel. And you'll see even more of this later in the issue. Back to the fight, and like I said, Psylocke is losing control of her powers, and one of the members, Beast, has got to go get her. He's got to go bail her out. And off screen, off camera, Wolverine and Cyclops have been captured, and Magneto's basically just throwing down the ultimatum: surrender or I'm gonna break him. Once again, we cut to one of my favorite characters, Forge. Very 90s, cybernetic limb, pockets, web gear. This stuff is called web gear for those of you who don't know. And in the military, it's web gear. Yeah, it has a lot of pockets, but they take it to an extreme in the comic books. And this is like the C-list X-Men. They're very useful, but they're not the mainline X-Men, and they're watching the mainline X-Men get their butts kicked. So they have to come up with a plan. Still keeping with the theme of the 90s, it's just action, action, action. The X-Men start to gain advantage, and then this dude named Chrome, who I really don't think was even used, he might even die in this series. Basically, his power is to turn people into Chrome. Not sure how useful that is, but I hope he's got some other skills. And Magneto and the Acolytes have captured the X-Men, and they're taken off to Asteroid M. Cutting back to this book, this is cool because it shows these X-Men are baby boomers. They were born probably in the 50s, reached their teenage years in the 60s, which is about the time that the X-Men started. The baby boomers have a deep mistrust of the older generation back then. There was a saying that's like, don't trust anybody over the age of 35. And this is them basically hacking the danger room so they can run these scenarios and they can talk amongst themselves. And Magneto can't listen in on them. Well, turns out Hank and Bobby were not in the training exercises, which probably shows why they got their butts kicked. And this is Cyclops going to Hank. Hank has this story arc where he's out of time, he's displaced out of time. The technology is way beyond his capacity, so he's kind of augmented himself with magic. I don't like this because Hank is a genius, and throughout time, geniuses have never been limited by their ability to learn. The whole point of the whole thing of being a genius is you have a heightened capacity to learn. They've always been limited by the technology. So if you take a 1960s Hank McCoy and throw him into today, he would catch up very fast, and his genius would show even today. But they've decided to go the route with him dabbling in dark magic. It looks like his crotch is talking to him, but I'm sure it's a book or some other magical thing. We go to Bobby, who is now gay. I'm really not going to touch that subject because I think Diversity in Comics and Captain Cummings have touched it quite a bit. And this is nothing but inflammatory. This can go nowhere but somewhere inflammatory. So I'm going to generally stay out of it. Cut to Magneto. And, you know, in this sequence, Magneto just seems like a decent guy. He's a cool guy, and there's really no reason to mistrust him, but you should. There are things in it that you should mistrust about him. Cut to... This is her poking through his mind, creating duplicates while she digs through his mind so that he can't really track her. It's neat. It's kind of got like an Inception type thing going on, but it's a neat sequence. Cut to the very famous and well done in the movie's concentration camp scene. And then they get the emergency call and they gotta jet off to Barcelona, which is a beautiful city. I've been there a long time ago. And they're confronting sentinels. These are like old school mechanical sentinels. And strangely enough, they're calling them fellow mutants, which catches the team off guard. It cuts there, it ends there. There's no real fight with the sentinels until the next issue. But you see here that Magneto is working on sending them back to the past. Once again, time travel. I'm being less and less enthused with time travel as a literary device in comics. I think it just gets messy. I think it's just overused. So we'll see where that leads. Cutting over here, you're seeing Magneto sick. There's these little low points that do a bit of exposition in between the fights, but 90s comics, fight, fight, fight. Here we go. We get a little bit of light shed on why Moira was so freaked out and upset. And Magneto shows up and basically he steals a house. Grand theft real estate. He just hops in the house, presses triangle or whatever button, and he just drives off with the house. Forge, all decked out with pockets, pockets, pockets. They're like, yeah, we kind of screwed up. This is why we're the C team. This is why we don't get invited to a whole lot of things, because yeah, we screwed up. All right, cut to Asteroid M, and Moira is having to confront basically some genetic stuff that she did to Magneto when he was turned into a little white-haired baby. Happened in Defenders in different issues. Go track it down. It's a neat read. I'm not sure how impactful it was aside from this story, but yeah, so she's been tampering with his genes, and as he should be, he's pretty pissed off. And he turns her into a chrome statue. Break away to the prologue. We're in Russia. This is the beginning of... This is layering, and this is really great. This is the beginning of the introduction of Omega Red, who from the 90s was definitely one of my favorite villains. And once again, you do a Meanwhile story, this takes a couple panels, page and a half, and you're done. Go back to the main story, go back to the setup. The X-Men are running training exercises in the Danger Room to see, okay, we have all these C-listers. How are we going to beat these guys with the C-listers? Shows a big dilemma. Well, not all these guys are C-listers, but some of them just aren't up to snuff. And Captain Pockets here is going to come help them out. Setting up for a big fight in space on Asteroid M. Action, action, action. As you see, there's the differences between now and yesterday are becoming glaring. So we'll continue this a little later this week, maybe. Tell me what you think in the comments. Give me a like. Watch my commercials, please, and have a good day. Talk to you soon.